Hey there, drowsy historian here. Tonight, we're slipping behind the wheel of a getaway car that's already halfway to the grave. You're not rebels, you're not icons, you're Bonnie Parker, and your life smells like sweat, gunpowder, and wet cigarette butts crushed into the floorboards. The newspapers think you're dangerous. The truth is you're just exhausted, bleeding into old bandages, sleeping with a pistol under your hip, and eating cold beans out of a can while Clyde mutters something about Arkansas backroads and revenge. This isn't a love story. It's a slow-motion collapse, wrapped in cotton stockings and second-hand lies. So before the engine stalls for good and your legs seize up from the crash wounds that never healed, go ahead and leave a comment telling me where you're listening from and what time it is. I love knowing who's tuning into these grim bedtime stories. And if you'd like early access to these long, slow descents into historical misery, check out the Patreon link in the description. Now take a deep breath, maybe your last peaceful one, and let's begin. You're not anyone important, not yet. You spend most of your days in a small diner, pouring coffee for people who don't look up when they speak. Men in dusty coats, women with tired babies, kids who stir sugar into the ketchup and call it dessert. You've got lipstick in your purse and a half-finished poem in your apron pocket, and neither one is doing you any good. Your feet hurt, your dreams are vague, you're smart enough to know this isn't all there is, but not yet smart enough to know what comes next might be worse. When people talk about you later, they'll say you were wild, reckless, in love with danger. That's generous. The truth is you were bored, not reckless, just unfulfilled in a quiet, gnawing way that chews through your good sense before you notice. You read dime store novels on your lunch break and stare at the cars going past, trying to picture yourself anywhere else, somewhere with neon lights or velvet curtains, somewhere you don't smell like bacon grease and sour milk, somewhere you don't have to smile for nickels. You meet Clyde because the world is small and your standards are tired. He's not much to look at, not yet anyway. Just another boy with slicked back hair and something sharp in his grin. He talks like he's been places even though he hasn't, but he looks at you like he sees something that hasn't dried up yet, and that feels like oxygen. He smells like gasoline and chewing gum and a little bit of sweat, and he talks like the diner's walls can't hold him. Like the whole world is temporary. You find that intoxicating. You shouldn't. He doesn't ask you to run, not at first, it's slower than that. A few drives, some stolen time. He lets you hold the wheel, just for a stretch of road no one cares about. It feels like freedom. It's not, but you don't know that yet. You think he's clever, and he is in the way that rats are clever when they find a way out of the trap without springing it. You think maybe you're clever too, just for standing close to him. You tell yourself you're not the type to be fooled. You believe it. Everyone believes something at the beginning. There's a photo later, the famous one, where you're holding a pistol and pretending to be mean. People love that photo. They say it shows your spirit. But the truth is it was Clyde's idea, and the gun wasn't even loaded. You thought it was funny. You weren't trying to be infamous. You were trying to look like you mattered, like someone who could take the world by the collar and shake something good out of it. You didn't know the image would outlive you. You didn't know that eventually no one would care whether it was a joke. Your mama doesn't like Clyde. That's not surprising. Mothers know things. She sees it in your eyes. The way you've started pulling away from yourself, bit by bit, to make room for something you can't name yet. You stop writing poems. You stop combing your hair the way she taught to you. You start lying about small things. Where you went, what you did. Whether Clyde's been staying over. It gets easier every time. Guilt is like anything else, manageable with practice. People will say you are fearless. That's not true either. You are afraid of a lot of things, of being forgotten, of being ordinary, of waking up at 50 with hands that ache from scrubbing plates. And a man who only touches you when he's drunk. Clyde made you feel like that future could be avoided, or at least delayed. He had maps with nowhere to go, guns without plans, and promises that sounded like freedom, even when they were just escape. You didn't care if it was a trick. Sometimes it's better to believe the trick. He told you He'd never let them take you alive. That sounded romantic when he said it, like something from a film reel, like you were both too big for the world to contain. But later, much later, when the bullets tear through the car like paper, you'll remember that promise and wish he hadn't kept it. But that's far off, isn't it? For now, there's still lipstick and laughter. There are still nights in the back seat of a borrowed car, dreaming of places that don't exist and names that sound better than yours. You are not an outlaw yet. You're a girl in soft shoes with a fast heartbeat and a weakness for liars. You think this is the beginning of something grand, something daring, but it's really the start of a long, slow fall into a story you won't get to finish. And the worst part is, you already know that. Somewhere deep in your ribs, you can feel the ending rustling its pages. You just don't want to look at it yet. You don't remember what was in the till. Maybe $20, maybe less. The man behind the counter had a mustache that twitched when he got nervous, and Clyde pointed the gun a little too hard, like he was trying to convince himself it was real. You didn't have a job in this one. You were just supposed to wait in the car. But when the door flew open and Clyde came barreling out, like the world was on fire, you didn't hesitate. You slammed your foot on the gas like he showed you, and the tyres screamed like something dying. The car was junk, some rust-bitten Ford that coughed when it hit 30. You took a corner too fast and nearly clipped a fence. Clyde was laughing. That high, breathless laugh he does when he's not sure if he's excited or terrified. You were too busy sweating through your dress to laugh. Your hands hurt from gripping the wheel. Your mouth tasted like metal. This was supposed to feel like flight, but it felt more like falling. You didn't realize you were bleeding until later. Just a nick, somewhere on your ankle, probably from that shattered bottle you stepped on getting out of the car. You remember the sound of glass under your heel, the sharp sting that didn't even register at first because your heart was beating loud enough to drown out pain. When you finally looked down, your stocking was soaked and sticky. It wasn't the wound that scared you. It was the thought that you hadn't noticed it happen. Afterwards, you hid behind an abandoned gas station for hours, crouched in the weeds, while Clyde counted bills with trembling fingers. It wasn't enough to cover a week's worth of food, let alone new tyres or safe shelter. He kept saying it went well, said it like a man who needs to believe it. You didn't say anything. Your leg was starting to throb, and the heat was turning the inside of your mouth to cotton. You'd never been so hungry, or so scared, or so far from whatever version of yourself used to work double shifts for tips and write poetry on receipt paper. You thought it would feel cinematic. That's what you told yourself. That somewhere, music would swell, and the camera would pan wide, and you'd look out over the road with defiance in your eyes. Instead, you're crouched in the dirt behind a gas pump that smells like piss, trying not to throw up from the adrenaline. Clyde keeps looking over his shoulder, like the sheriff himself is going to materialize from the dust. You want to ask him what the plan is, but you already know there isn't one. There's just forward. Later that night, you soak your foot in a basin of cold water in a nameless motel that charges by the hour. The room stinks of mildew and cigarettes, and the bed creaks every time you breathe near it. Clyde wraps your foot in a strip of his shirt, the cleanest fabric either of you have. He says you were brave. You don't feel brave. You feel like a fool, in borrowed clothes with dirt under your fingernails and someone else's money in your pocket. The first getaway is the worst one, not because it's the most dangerous, though it nearly is, but because it's the one that breaks the spell. The idea that this will ever be glorious, that you'll ever be famous for something other than being desperate. You start to understand the real weight of it all. The hunger, the sweat, the endless ache behind your eyes. Every loud noise makes you flinch. Every siren feels personal. You sleep in pieces, jaw clenched, hand on a pistol you barely know how to use. The next morning you look in the mirror and you're surprised by your own reflection. Your hair's wild, your eyes are hollow, your lips are chapped, and your cheek is streaked with dried blood. You thought you'd look like a rebel, You look like someone who lost a bet. Clyde kisses your forehead like nothing's wrong, and you let him, because it's easier than asking questions. He tells you the next job will be smoother, that the first one is always messy. He says this like he's done it a dozen times. You don't ask if that's true. You wrap your wounded foot in a rag and shove it into a shoe that doesn't fit right anymore. You open a can of beans with a stolen knife and eat them cold. There's no music, no poetry, just the smell of rust and rot and the sound of tyres on gravel as you move on to whatever's next. You're not running toward anything, just away from everything you left behind. The blood has dried, but the panic, that stays with you. No one warned you that outlaw life would smell like this. Not blood and gunpowder, though there's that too, but the smaller things, damp socks, burnt coffee, the sour tang of sweat that never fully dries. And rot, always rot, sneaking in at the edges. You live in rooms with peeling wallpaper and cigarette burns on the curtains. Sometimes the beds have sheets, sometimes they don't. Sometimes you sleep on the floor, because you're not convinced what's in the mattress is dead yet. You've stopped asking for clean towels. There are none. Clyde says it's temporary. Just a few more jobs, he promises. Just a little more cash. Then maybe you can head west, disappear into some town with more sun and fewer cops. You nod like you believe him, but you've started counting the days by how long it takes a bruise to fade. You wash your hair in the sink when there's running water. When there's not, you don't bother. After a while, the mirror stops surprising you. The stranger looking back is still you. Just quieter, rougher around the edges, and limping a little more each day. Your legs never fully healed after the crash. That part no one talks about. The wreck that snapped your spirit worse than any prison cell could. Clyde was trying to outrun a roadblock. The car flipped. You were pinned under it, hot metal against bare skin, screaming so hard your voice broke. The burns went deep. The doctors never saw you. There were no doctors. Just whiskey, a pocket knife, and some rags boiled in motel water. The scars are pink and twisted now, crisscrossed with peeling skin that never seems to stop flaking. Some days the pain's a low throb, other days it screams. Clyde does what he can. He cleans the wounds with shaking hands, like he's changing a tyre in the dark. He doesn't look you in the eye when he does it, and you don't ask him to. You used to cry when he poured the alcohol. Now you just close your eyes and grip the sink until your knuckles turn white. Screaming takes energy. Energy takes food. Food takes money, and money takes another job. It's a circle you can't escape, and your body knows it. You've started dragging one foot when you walk. You tell yourself it's just temporary. You lie a lot, even to yourself. The tub in this motel is rust-stained and chipped. It leaks slowly, with a sound like someone whispering nonsense through the walls. You sit in it anyway, because it's the closest thing to clean you've felt in days. The water goes from clear to grey in minutes. You watch the dirt lift from your skin, like it's trying to escape too. The burns sting when they hit the water. So does the graze from the last shootout, a bullet that skipped your thigh like a stone on a pond. It didn't go deep, but it didn't need to. Infection doesn't care how far it travelled. It only needs a door. You try not to think about how long you've been limping, about the way your stockings stick to your skin when the pus leaks through, about how sometimes, when Clyde's not looking, you bite your own hand to keep from whimpering. There's no glamour in this part, no camera, no poetry, just the quiet drip of water from a broken faucet and a body that's healing wrong. The kind of wrong that doesn't get better, the kind that keeps you awake at night, trembling, jaw clenched, sweat beading on your lip even when the room is cold. Clyde tells you you're brave. He kisses your knee like it's still whole. You let him because it hurts less than pulling away. He doesn't talk about doctors anymore. You don't either. You both know what that would mean. Too many questions, too many people looking too closely. So you bandage it again with one of his shirts, torn into strips. You laugh when you realise it's the same one he wore in your favourite photo. The one with the cigar, the one that made people think you were dangerous. You're not. You're just damaged and pretending otherwise. You don't sleep well. You toss and sweat and jerk awake at every creak of the floorboards. You dream about hospitals, clean white sheets, the smell of antiseptic. Then you wake up and smell mildew, and your legs are stuck to the blanket with blood again. And Clyde is already up, peeking through the blinds like the sun itself might have a badge. Some days you don't get out of bed. Clyde brings you stale crackers and kisses your forehead like that'll fix it. You chew the crackers slowly, because eating too fast makes you sick now. Your stomach's not what it used to be. The body keeps score, every bruise, every splinter, every night you went without food or sleep or safety. It all adds up. You've stopped caring how you look. You haven't worn lipstick in weeks. You can't remember the last time you brushed your hair. Your thighs are raw, your nails are cracked, you feel older than your mother. And still, you press on. Because there's no choice now. Because every road back has closed behind you, and every new motel room just smells like the last one. You didn't think much about food before. It was just there, something to pick at between shifts, something to complain about when the eggs were overdone, or the coffee tasted burnt. Now it's all you think about. Hunger comes in waves, and when it hits, it dulls everything else. The ache in your leg, the worry in Clyde's voice, even the sound of sirens in the distance. It all fades under the growl in your gut. You learn to chase meals like other people chase rest. And when you do eat, it's never warm. Most days it's something out of a can, beans mostly. Sometimes creamed corn or peaches when you get lucky. The labels are always half peeled, and Clyde opens them with a stolen knife that's more rust than metal. You eat with your fingers, or a bent spoon that lives in the glove box. Cold food tastes like punishment. It slides down your throat without satisfaction, clings to your teeth, leaves your stomach feeling like it was tricked. You can't remember the last time you ate something hot that wasn't coffee heated over a stolen campfire and served in a chipped mug that once belonged to a dead man. Every now and then Clyde splurges. A gas station sandwich, a pack of jerky, but nothing ever tastes right. The bread is stale. The cheese is sweating. Even the meat jerky tastes like motor oil and dust. You chew it anyway, slow and careful, because there might not be another chance tomorrow. There usually isn't. Hunger makes you grateful for things you used to throw away. You once found a half-eaten candy bar under the passenger seat and cried while you ate it. Not because it was sweet, because it reminded you of a life where people left food behind without thinking. Clyde doesn't eat much anymore. Says it slows him down. Truth is, he's scared the minute he puts something in his mouth, someone's going to come through the door. So he smokes more than he chews, lets the cigarettes kill his appetite while you chew your way through another tin of beans in silence. You hate the smell, but you don't say anything. At least smoke is warm. That's more than you can say for the food. You try to keep a stash in the car, cans rattling under the seat, a crumpled brown bag of hard candies, a jar of pickles that rolled its way into the trunk weeks ago. But it never lasts. You end up sharing with someone, a drifter, a kid, a cousin of a cousin who's too scared to ask for more. You're not heartless, not yet, but every time you give something away, you wonder if you'll regret it tomorrow. Generosity is expensive when your life is measured in calories. There's something especially cruel about eating in the dark. You huddle in the front seat with a blanket over your lap and a can in your hands. The metal's sharp where it's been pried open wrong. The wind whistles through the cracked window, and Clyde keeps the engine running just enough to drown out your chewing. You don't speak, you don't smile, you just eat, slow and steady, like you're fueling a machine that might need to run again before morning. You finish the can, wipe your fingers on your skirt, and try not to think about what you just swallowed. In better times, if you can even call them that, you'd pull over by a creek or behind a barn, stretch out a blanket, pretend it was a picnic. Clyde would lay out whatever you had and say it was just like camping. You'd laugh, even if the bread was mouldy and the milk was warm. It's not like that now. There's no pretending left. You eat in silence, shoulder to shoulder in rooms that smell like mildew and gun oil. The only sound is the scraping of tin and the occasional slurp of something you're too tired to taste. You've forgotten what full feels like, not just satisfied, actually full. The kind of meal that makes you sit back and sigh. Everything you eat now just takes the edge off. You dream of biscuits, warm ones, soft and buttery, with jam that drips down your chin. But even in the dream, you wake up before you taste them. Clyde dreams of steak sometimes, says it out loud in his sleep. A ribeye, mashed potatoes, maybe some pie. Then he wakes up, lights a cigarette, and doesn't say anything at all. You once tried to write a poem about hunger, about the way it empties more than your stomach, how it carves out your pride, your patience, even your memory. But the words didn't come. They never do anymore. All you could think about was the can of peaches you left behind in Arkansas, hidden under a floorboard. You still wonder if it's there, if someone else found it, if they ate it cold like you would have, with sticky fingers and a desperate smile. You used to like reading about yourself. When the first articles came out, you cut them from the paper and folded them into your bag, like souvenirs from some version of your life where you were important. Lovers on the run, the devil's sweethearts, Barrow Gang strikes again. They made you sound like a character in a dime store novel. Dangerous, seductive, fast. Not a woman with cracked heels, bad breath, and blood in her socks. Not a woman with rot on her thighs and dirt under her fingernails. Not someone who still cries when she thinks no one can hear. The headlines say you're wicked, that you laugh while you shoot, that you drink moonshine by the gallon and toss dynamite like party favours. You want to laugh at that, but it's not funny anymore. You did fire a gun once, twice maybe, but you didn't hit anything. You never liked the sound. It's too sharp, too final. Clyde always said you didn't have to pull the trigger to be part of the job. That just being there was enough. And it was. You were part of it. You won't lie to yourself about that. But the papers don't want the truth. They want a story they can print in bold. They don't mention the quiet parts. They don't talk about the morning you watched a man bleed out behind a barn, his mouth open like he wanted to say something, but never did. They don't mention how Clyde sat down afterward, put his face in his hands, and didn't move for half an hour. Or how you just stood there, not knowing what to say, stomach hollow and legs shaking. They don't talk about the time he sobbed into your lap because he thought he'd killed a kid. Turns out the boy lived barely, but that didn't undo the sound Clyde made that night. You still hear it sometimes. Some reporter once called you a pistol-packing vamp with lipstick as red as blood. You clipped that one too, not because you liked it, but because in a way, it was the only thing that made you feel real. The lipstick part was true. You wore it even when you had nothing else. Even when your burns throbbed and your clothes smelled like mildew. You'd smear on that cheap red, look in a cracked mirror, and remind yourself that you were still here, still a person, still someone with a name, not just a ghost in someone else's headline. You used to write poetry, real poetry, not the kind people laugh at in bars. You wrote about hunger and heat and love and Texas skies, about the ache in your bones when the road stretched too long. You wrote about Clyde too, back when you still believed he could get you out of this. Back when he still kissed you like he meant it. You stopped writing a while ago. It felt useless. What's the point in writing things no one will ever read? The papers never print your poems, just your rap sheet. The worst part is knowing they're not even afraid of you. Not really. They're afraid of the version of you they made up. The one with the dead eyes and the trigger finger. The one who lights cigarettes with stolen bills and shoots sheriffs for fun. That woman doesn't exist, but she's more useful than the truth. She sells more papers. She justifies more bullets. The real you, the girl limping through another state line with burns on her leg and crackers in her coat pocket. That version is too sad to print. Clyde says it's better this way. That if people fear you, they leave you alone. But you don't want fear, you want to be seen. You want someone to understand that you're not made of stone, that you still cry when it hurts, that you still think about your mother, that you still wonder how your life might have looked if you'd married that boy from back home who fixed watches and smelled like soap. You're not sure if he'd recognise you now. You're not sure you'd recognise yourself. You dream sometimes about walking into a police station and telling the whole story, not to confess, not exactly, but to explain, to tell someone that it wasn't always like this, that you didn't wake up one day and decide to be a fugitive, that it happened slowly, like rot in the floorboards, until one day you realise the house you built couldn't stand anymore. But you never do, because even if you did, they wouldn't print the truth. They'd just run another headline, something loud, something easy, something that bleeds. You're tired of being famous in the wrong way, tired of people whispering your name like it's a warning, tired of looking at your own face in a blurry photograph and thinking, she doesn't look dangerous, she just looks tired. You keep the clippings anyway, folded and fading, tucked in the bottom of your bag, like pieces of a self you never got to be. Some nights, when Clyde is asleep and the wind sounds like it's trying to say something, you read them again, not because you believe them, but because you want to remember what it felt like to be important, even if it was all a lie. The car always feels heavier after a job. Doesn't matter what you're carrying, a sack of stolen bills, a box of ammo, a body wrapped in a stolen blanket, it all pulls the back end of the car toward the ground, like something trying to bury itself. Sometimes you wonder if the weight is real, or if it's just guilt reshaping gravity. You tell yourself, it doesn't matter. You keep driving anyway. The first time someone died because of you, it wasn't even your bullet. Clyde fired. You were outside sitting in the driver's seat, engine running, trying to keep your hands from shaking. You didn't see it happen. You just heard the shot, loud and sudden, like a door slamming shut on a life. Clyde ran out a moment later, eyes wide, jaw clenched, saying, "Go, go, go," over and over, like it was a prayer. You didn't ask what happened. You didn't want to know, but you knew anyway. Later, he told you the man reached for something, maybe a gun, maybe just a wallet, maybe nothing at all. Clyde said he had no choice. You nodded, even though part of you didn't believe him. But what were you supposed to say? Let's go back and check. Let's turn ourselves in. You kept driving, and when you finally stopped, when the adrenaline wore off and the shaking started, you didn't cry. You just stared at your hands and wondered when they stopped looking like yours. Sometimes the blood comes with you, on your shoes, on your clothes, on Clyde's hands when he forgets to wash them right away. It dries quick in the heat, but it sticks in the creases of your skin. You smell it later, hours after the job's done, long after you've changed your clothes. You catch it in the folds of the seat, in the sweat on your neck, in the air between you and him. You can't scrub it out. Not really. It always comes back like rust bleeding through old paint. You start noticing things you didn't before, the sound bodies make when they fall. The way blood pools, slow then faster, like it realises what's happened, a second too late. The silence afterward is the worst. It's not peaceful, it's not clean, it's thick and ugly and loud in its own way. Sometimes Clyde turns on the radio after a job, just to have something to fill the air. He hums along to a song like nothing's happened, and you sit there pretending you're somewhere else, someone else, anyone else. There was one time you thought the man might still be alive. He was breathing, barely. You saw the rise and fall of his chest while Clyde rifled through his pockets. You wanted to say something. We should help him. We can't just leave him here. But the words stayed in your throat like stones. Clyde said he wouldn't make it, that it was cleaner to leave now, that staying would only get you both caught. You nodded again. You always nod. Later, when you close your eyes, you see that man's face, his mouth open, like he was about to speak. You'll never know what he was trying to say. Once it was a friend, or something like one, a boy who rode with you for a while, cracked jokes, gave you a candy bar he'd been saving. He got shot in the stomach during a job gone sideways. You loaded him into the back seat, and he died somewhere outside Tulsa with his head against your arm. You didn't bury him. There was no time. Just left him in the ditch with a blanket over his face. Clyde said he wouldn't have wanted a fuss. You sat in silence for miles afterward, chewing your cheek until it bled. Even when the car's empty, you feel the weight. Like the ghosts don't want to get out. Like they've buckled themselves in, arms crossed, judgment thick in the air. You try not to think about their names, but you remember them anyway. You remember what they wore, how they smelled, how warm they were, even when you touch them for the last time. No one tells you that about the dead, how warm they stay for a while. It makes it harder. It makes it real. You don't talk about it with Clyde. He changes the subject, lights a cigarette, says it's part of the life. You nod again, always nodding. But part of you wonders if he feels it too. That pull in the back seat, like something's riding along even when you're alone. Some nights, when the car's quiet and the moonlight hits the windshield just right, you think you see someone in the rearview mirror. Just for a second, you never turn around. You already know what's there. You stop pretending this will end well. That fantasy wore off somewhere back in Oklahoma. Maybe the third time you woke up to Clyde standing at the window, pistol in one hand, curtain clenched in the other, whispering, "Did you hear that?" The truth is you always hear it. Footsteps that aren't there. Voices just under the hum of the radiator. Engine sounds when no one's coming. Your nerves are so fried you flinch at your own reflection in the motel mirror. You sleep in shifts now, 2 hours at a time, boots on, hand near your gun, like that'll help when the door finally gives. The knock, if it ever comes, won't be a warning. It'll be the sound that comes after you've already been spotted, already been surrounded. That's how it always is in the stories. When the knock hits, you're already dead. You know that, so you dread it in silence, muscles coiled tight, waiting for the sound of splintering wood. Every creak of the floorboards could be the last thing you hear before everything goes red. You stopped looking at maps weeks ago. There's no safe place left, no route that doesn't end in a ditch or a lineup or a headline with your name under it. Every town feels the same now. Too quiet, too suspicious, like the walls are leaning in to listen. You scan the sidewalks like a soldier, noting every face, every turn of a head. You know the shape of a badge under a jacket, the way a shopkeeper's smile shifts when they recognise you. Clyde keeps telling you to relax, that no one recognises anything unless it's printed in black and white. But your face has been printed. Yours and his. Posters, newspapers, warnings nailed to the walls of post offices and gas stations. Armed and dangerous. You wish you felt dangerous. Mostly, you just feel watched. You used to keep track of where you were. Names of towns, counties, highway markers. Now you don't bother. They all blur together anyway. One long stretch of gas stations, dusty windows, and motels that charge extra if you ask for a second blanket. You know better than to use real names at check-in. Clyde's gone through a dozen aliases this month alone. You don't even look at the clerks anymore. Just keep your head down, count the steps to the exit, memorise the number of locks on the door. You stopped writing in your notebook. It used to be a comfort, a way to put your fear somewhere else. Trap it between lines of poetry, so it wouldn't sit in your stomach all night. Now the words won't come, or maybe they do, and you're just too tired to catch them. You think in half-formed phrases, metaphors about traps and sinking and wolves that circle slow. You never finish the thoughts. The fear eats through the language before you get to the rhyme. Frank Harmer's name comes up more and more. Used to be a rumour, a maybe, a whisper in a truck stop bathroom. Now it's fact. You saw a paper someone left behind at a diner in Shreveport. Ex-Ranger Hamer, hired to hunt Barrow Gang. Clyde tried to play it off, said Hamer was just a washed-up cowboy looking for a paycheck, but his jaw got tight when he said it, and he didn't finish his coffee. You didn't either. You left $1 on the table and walked out before the waitress could come back. Harmer isn't like the others. He's not some bumbling sheriff with a borrowed gun and a grudge. He's a tracker, patient, quiet, the kind of man who doesn't say much but still gets what he wants. You don't know his face, but you know what he represents. He's the end of the road dressed in a suit. You've seen too many movies to believe you'll outdrive someone like that. Clyde keeps saying he'll handle it, that if it comes down to it, he won't let them take you alive. You nod again. What else is there to do? You start second-guessing everyone. The man who stares too long at the grocery store, the kid at the gas station who runs to make a phone call the second you leave, even the woman who gave you a blanket once. You wonder if she kept it because she wanted to help, or because she wanted your scent for the cops. It makes you mean. Paranoid. You snap at Clyde more. You don't trust waitresses, don't trust windows, don't trust sleep. You don't even trust your own instincts anymore. Fear has chewed them to pieces. Some nights, you pack your things in silence, heart pounding, sure you'll have to run again. Then nothing happens, no knock, no sirens, just silence, but even that feels suspicious now. Like the world's holding its breath before the fall. You sit on the edge of the bed, with your boots unlaced, eyes on the door, wondering if this is the night. You stopped hoping for peace a long time ago. Now you just hope the end isn't slow. Clyde holds your hand like he's anchoring himself to something solid, something that won't disappear when the tires blow or the money runs out. Sometimes you'll let him. Sometimes you even squeeze back. It's not affection, not really. It's more like routine, like muscle memory. You've been holding hands for so long that it would feel strange not to. That doesn't mean it feels good. It just means you don't know what else to do with your fingers anymore. You used to think it was love. That heady, stupid kind of love where everything feels urgent and every look is a poem. There were days early on when you looked at him and saw something big, someone with grit and fire, someone who wanted to carve a place in the world, even if it had to be done with a crowbar and a pistol. That version of him is mostly gone now. What's left is someone who flinches in his sleep, who forgets where he is when he wakes up, who talks in half sentences and keeps checking the rearview mirror even when you're parked. You still have moments, here and there, where it feels like connection, when you're both laughing at something dumb or sitting in the car at sunset, too tired to run and too wired to sleep. He'll look at you and smile like you're the only person left alive who understands him. And maybe you are, but it doesn't feel like love anymore. It feels like obligation, like the two of you are survivors of the same shipwreck, holding on to each other not because you want to, but because you drown alone. There's no privacy between you anymore. You've seen each other at your worst too many times. He's seen you scream from pain, cry from exhaustion, and piss behind a tree with a gun tucked into your waistband. You've seen him bleed through his shirt, throw up from nerves, and fall asleep mid-sentence with his hand still on his revolver. Romance doesn't survive that. Whatever spark you started with has been buried under bandages, bad motel lighting, and too many shared silences that stretch too long. You've both stopped saying, "I love you." It wasn't a decision, it just stopped happening. The words feel ridiculous now, too soft, too easy. What you have is harder than love. It's a kind of dependency that digs deep, into your muscles, your routines, your expectations. You know what he'll say before he says it. You can tell what mood he's in by how he folds his coat. That's not intimacy, that's survival. It's knowing the rhythms of the one person who hasn't turned you in, who still shares a blanket with you when the heat goes out. You wonder sometimes what would happen if you left. Not dramatically, not in a hail of gunfire or a getaway gone wrong, but just left. Took a bus, walked away, changed your name, and started somewhere new. But the thought never sticks. Not because you can't imagine it, but because you don't believe you'd make it far. You'd run out of money, or get caught, or freeze up the first time someone asked for your ID. Or worse, you'd make it, and find out you don't know who you are without him. He talks about the future sometimes, not in detail and never seriously, But it's there, floating in the pauses between plans. A house with a porch, a car that isn't hot, maybe chickens. You nod along because it's easier than saying what you're thinking. That there is no future, not for people like you. Not when your names are printed in every police bulletin west of the Mississippi. Not when you've got wounds that don't heal and habits that can't be unlearned. He probably knows it too, but it's easier to pretend. You don't kiss much anymore. When you do, it's quick, practical. Sometimes you miss it, the softness, the warmth, the illusion that something good can exist between you. But mostly, you don't have the energy. Physical affection feels like a luxury, like hot meals or fresh clothes. You tell yourself it's not important. That connection doesn't have to be tender. That knowing someone's weight beside you in bed is enough. But you still feel the ache sometimes, the gap where something used to be. You don't hate him. That would make things simpler. If he were cruel, if he blamed you, if he made you feel small. But he doesn't. Most of the time, he's gentle in that tired way of someone who's seen too much to bother being mean. He brings you food when you're too sick to move. He watches the windows while you sleep. He brushes your hair with his fingers when the comb breaks. It's not love, but it's close enough that you stop questioning it. You're not in love. Not really. Not anymore. But you're something. Something tangled and permanent and too deep to undo. Maybe it started as love. Maybe it still is in a way. Or maybe it's just the only thing left standing after everything else has burned away. Either way, you're not letting go. Not because you couldn't, but because you already know what's waiting on the other side. And it's lonelier than anything you've survived so far. No one tells this story in the bar. This isn't the kind of shootout that gets you turned into a legend. There's no clever getaway, no stolen kiss behind the wheel, no fiery speech or last stand. Just blood and screaming, and the metallic taste of panic in your mouth as you crawl across a dirty linoleum floor and wedge yourself under the sink. You weren't armed, you weren't brave, you were cold and barefoot and hiding, while Clyde bled out somewhere in the next room. It happened in the middle of the afternoon. That was the worst part. There was something especially cruel about the sunlight streaming through the windows while bullets chewed through the walls. Clyde had said it would be a quick stop, grab supplies, maybe get a few hours of sleep. You were still peeling off your shoes when the first shot cracked through the air like a snapped bone. Then the glass shattered. Then everything turned into noise and dust and motion you couldn't follow. You didn't see where the bullets came from. You never do. 1 second, the world is still. The next, it's a war zone. You drop to the floor without thinking, just like Clyde taught you. Crawl, stay low, don't scream. You did all of that. You kept your head down and your mouth shut while gunfire ripped apart the room around you. A lamp exploded near your ear. Something, maybe plaster, maybe shrapnel, sliced open your shoulder. You didn't even feel it at first. Your ears were ringing too loud. Clyde shouted your name once, just once. Then he was groaning, a wet, ragged sound that made your stomach flip. You couldn't see him, couldn't tell how bad it was, but the way he kept cursing, soft, slurred, furious, told you enough. He was hit, probably more than once, and you were useless, pinned behind a cabinet, gripping a kitchen knife that wasn't going to stop anyone. You remember thinking about your mother, not because she could help, but because you wanted to say sorry. For everything. For how far you'd fallen. For the life she wouldn't recognise. The shooting didn't last long. It never does. Maybe 2 minutes, 3 at most. But time stretches when you think every second might be the one that tears your head open. When it finally stopped, the silence hit hard, like a slap. All you could hear was Clyde breathing in short, sharp gasps and something dripping. Blood or water, you weren't sure. You waited a full minute before moving, then another. Then you crawled out, shaking like a leaf, legs barely working. Clyde was slumped against the wall, one hand clutching his stomach, the other still holding his pistol. His face was grey. His shirt was soaked through. You dropped the knife and pressed your hands over the wound without thinking. There was so much blood, too much. It pulsed between your fingers, sticky and hot, and you could feel him twitch every time you moved. He tried to say something, but it came out as a cough. You told him to shut up, told him to breathe, told him it wasn't that bad, even though you were already thinking about where to dump the car if he didn't make it. You stayed like that for what felt like hours, just the two of you, blood pooling under your knees, the air still sharp with gunpowder. Eventually, you managed to drag him to the car. You don't remember how. Your body did what it had to do. You found towels in the trunk, pressed them to the wound, drove with one hand while holding pressure with the other. Your vision kept going blurry. Not from tears, from pure animal fear. He didn't die, somehow. You found a woman who owed Clyde a favour, the kind of woman who didn't ask questions, and kept a bottle of whiskey and a sewing kit under her bed. She stitched him up, gave you a blanket, and said you both looked like ghosts. You didn't answer. You just stared at your hands, still stained red, and wondered how long it would take before they stopped shaking. You don't talk about that day. Not with Clyde, not with anyone. It wasn't glorious, it wasn't cinematic. You hid under a sink while the man you supposedly loved screamed in pain. That's not the kind of thing you put in poems. That's the kind of thing that keeps you up at night, listening for footsteps, waiting for the next door to break open. Every outlaw has stories they like to tell, stories that make them sound bigger, meaner, smarter. This isn't one of those. This is the story you carry in your bones, in the silence between conversations, in the way you flinch when someone slams a cabinet too hard. This is the story that makes you wonder, when you look in the mirror, if you're still you, or just whatever's left after the cowardice is carved out, and the fear has nowhere left to go. There's one photo of you that people seem to love. You're holding a cigar, tilted at an angle, mouth curled in a smirk that barely looks like you now. One leg is cocked forward, and the pistol in your hand is pointed down, like a joke version of a bandit. Your hair is done up nice, your lipstick's clean, and your dress doesn't have any holes in it. The pose was Clyde's idea. You didn't even smoke cigars. But you thought it was funny. A little moment of play acting, like dressing up for a costume party neither of you had been invited to. You didn't know it would follow you like a shadow. Back then it still felt like a game. The headlines weren't personal yet. The wanted posters were just curiosities. People in town would squint at the photos and say, "Well, that doesn't look like her," and you'd laugh from the front seat of the car, parked a block away. You thought the whole thing was surreal, a strange, glamorous version of someone else's story that you'd stumbled into by accident. You didn't think it would last. You certainly didn't think you'd end up dying for it. Now when you see that photo, and you still do, in newspapers left behind or pinned to bulletin boards in gas stations, it doesn't look like you. It looks like someone trying to look dangerous, someone who still had skin unscarred by fire, someone who could walk without help, someone who smiled with her whole face. You don't smile like that anymore. You don't smile much at all. And if someone took a photo of you now, you know what they'd see. A gaunt face, hair matted with dust, a mouth too tired for charm, eyes like old glass. It's a strange thing, knowing you've already peaked in the public eye, that the best version of you is frozen in time, carefully curated and misunderstood. You've become more symbol than person, more headline than girl. The newspapers call you gun moll, bandit queen, killer sweetheart. They print the same handful of photos like holy relics. Never mind that you haven't looked like that in months. You could be dead already, and no one would know the difference. They'd still be printing that photo. Lipstick perfect, pistol tilted, cigar clutched like you meant it. Clyde says it means you've made it, that only the important ones get turned into myths. You tell him that's nonsense, but you know he needs to believe it, needs to think that being hunted means you mattered, that if people remember your name, you didn't waste your life. You're not so sure. Being remembered and being understood are not the same thing. They remember the version of you they want. The rebel girl. The outlaw's muse. The one with fire in her veins. Not the woman who limps through back doors and winces when she has to climb stairs. Sometimes you wonder what your mother thinks when she sees those pictures. If she cuts them from the paper or pretends not to recognize your face. If she prays for you or curses your name. You used to imagine she kept your old photos in a drawer, ones from school or from the county fair, the ones where your knees were still unscathed and your smile wasn't a defense mechanism. Now you figure she probably stopped looking altogether. It's easier that way. You've caught your reflection in windows, in gas station mirrors, in the sheen of polished silverware that hasn't been stolen yet. Every time, it jars you. Not because you look bad, though you do, but because you always forget how far you've gone from the girl in the picture. Your face is thinner. Your hands are calloused. Your clothes hang wrong. You look like someone who's been on the run too long. Someone who hasn't slept a full night in a year. You wouldn't recognize yourself if the picture didn't keep showing up to remind you. The world wants outlaws. It can romanticize. It wants danger wrapped in silk. It wants Bonnie and Clyde, not Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. It wants legends. So it takes your face and flattens it, turns it into a poster, a punchline, a story for people to whisper about over coffee. You can feel yourself being erased, even as you're still alive, replaced by some version of you that never existed, never bled, never begged, never hid under a sink with your hands over your ears. The myth is easier to carry than the truth, easier for them anyway. You don't get that luxury. You have to carry the real weight, the blood, the fear, the way Clyde cries in his sleep and mutters names you don't recognise. You carry the cracked ribs, the festering wounds, the burns that itch at night when the air gets still. The picture doesn't show any of that. Just a girl with a smirk, trying to look tough for the camera. You kept a copy once, folded it and stuck it in your bag like a good luck charm. It's gone now, left behind in some motel drawer or dropped on the floor of a stolen car. You're not sorry. You don't need a reminder of who you were pretending to be. Not anymore. The mirror does that well enough. You don't die all at once. That's the biggest lie in the stories there, that it happens quick. One shot, one chase, one final blaze of glory. But that's not how it works out here. You die in parts, small ones. Skin that splits open and never quite heals. Gums that bleed when you bite into stale bread. Blisters that turn into open sores. A cough that comes back each night and stays a little longer in the morning. No one notices at first. You barely notice yourself. But the road keeps taking, piece by piece, until there's not much left to steal. The boots you wear are cracked and warped, the soles worn down to the shape of your limp. You stuffed old newspaper inside them weeks ago to soften the impact, but it just turns to pulp when it rains. The pain in your legs never really leaves. It just changes places, moves around like it's looking for a new place to hurt. Clyde tries to carry you sometimes when it gets bad, but you hate that more than the walking. It makes you feel like dead weight, like luggage he should have dropped 100 miles ago. You try not to look at the worst of it. The skin where the burns were is a mess, raw, slick in places, scabbed over in others. You bandage it when you can, but there's never enough clean cloth. And the stuff you do have smells like mildew before it even touches you. You tried using whiskey once, nearly passed out from the pain. It bubbled and frothed like you were cleaning a rusted pan instead of a person. Clyde said it meant it was working. You didn't have the strength to argue. Your teeth have started to ache. One in the back is loose. It throbs at night and stabs sharp when you chew. You try to favour the other side of your mouth, but eventually that starts to hurt too. Clyde offered to pull it once, said he'd seen it done before. You told him to keep his hands to himself. The idea of him holding a pair of pliers and hovering over your mouth made you more afraid than any lawman ever has. So you keep the tooth, you name the pain. You learn to eat soft things when you can, or nothing at all when you can't. Even the good days feel like chores. The car breaks down more often now. Belts snap. Tyres go flat. Sometimes you push it to the edge of a gas station lot and pretend like you just arrived. Clyde curses under the hood while you sit on the curb, pretending not to notice the blood leaking through your bandages again. Every fix is temporary. Every solution is borrowed time. You used to believe in luck. Now you believe in friction, the slow grind of rubber on road, of skin on fabric, of time on flesh. There's a kind of rot that settles in when you're never clean. You can't always see it, but you can smell it. In your clothes, in your hair, in the car seats and the bed sheets and the blankets you keep folded in the trunk. It clings to everything. That sour, oily scent of people who have nowhere to go and too many places they can't stay. You've washed in creeks, in gas station sinks, with bar soap and dish soap and whatever you could get your hands on. But it never lasts. You're dirty again by nightfall. Sleep doesn't help anymore. You wake up feeling worse than when you closed your eyes, sore, stiff, neck crooked from too many nights in the front seat. Clyde sometimes shakes you awake, says you were whimpering in your sleep. You don't remember the dreams, just the lingering dread, like someone was reaching for you and almost succeeded. You tell him you're fine. You always say you're fine. That's easier than trying to explain how tired you are, not the kind of tired that sleep cures, the kind that lives in your bones. Your fingernails are cracked, your lips are always chapped. Your hair has started falling out in clumps, not enough to go bald, just enough to notice. You find strands on the dashboard, on your pillow, on Clyde's coat. He never says anything. Maybe he thinks it's normal. Maybe he just doesn't know what to say. You wouldn't either, if the roles were reversed. What do you say to someone who's unravelling in front of you? Slowly, quietly, without making a fuss. If you're not going out in glory, you're wearing through, like an old coat that's been patched too many times, seams fraying, colour fading, still technically doing its job but barely. You don't even flinch when you hear gunfire in the distance anymore. You just take a breath and wait to see if this is your turn. Most days it isn't. That almost feels worse. At least getting shot would be something different. There's a kind of dignity in dramatic endings, in going out with a bang, with headlines and spectacle. But this is just erosion. A slow fade into something less human with each passing day. The legend people tell won't include any of this. They'll skip the infected leg, the cracked molars, the part where you couldn't get your boots on without crying. They'll remember the photo, the smirk, the gun, the pose. And maybe that's for the best. Nobody wants to hear about a slow bleed, but you live it anyway. It was the middle of the night, the kind of night where the air feels thick, like it's pressing against your skin, trying to smother you without making a sound. The fire had burned out hours earlier, and Clyde was asleep in the front seat, one arm hanging limp out the window. You sat on the edge of a dried-up ditch, staring at the trees. They were tall and dark and quiet, stretching on for what looked like miles. You imagined just standing up, walking into them and not stopping. No plan, no destination. Just one foot in front of the other until your body gave out, or the world lost track of you. It wasn't the first time you'd thought about leaving, but it was the first time it felt real. Like something you might actually do instead of just daydream about when the pain in your leg kept you awake. Or when Clyde lit another cigarette and didn't offer you one. You didn't hate him. That was the problem. It would have been easier if he'd hit you, cheated on you, left you stranded in some gas station with empty pockets and a busted knee. But he never did. He just kept being exactly who he was, and broken, loyal, dangerous, and scared. Just like you. You looked at him through the windshield and tried to picture him waking up to find you gone. You wondered how long it would take him to notice. If he'd even chase after you, he probably would. But not out of love, out of habit, out of panic, out of fear that without you, the whole thing would come undone. You were the glue, or at least the last thread holding it together. That's how it always felt. Like if you left, he'd fall apart. And if he fell apart, the guilt would follow you through those trees and find you anyway. You thought about your mother, not in the way you used to, with shame and longing and half-hearted apologies rehearsed in your head. No, this time it was more distant, faded, like a childhood memory that no longer belongs to you. You couldn't remember the sound of her voice anymore, just the way she used to hold your wrist when she meant business. Not your hand, your wrist, firm, unshakable. She would have told you to run. She would have said it long before now, but the voice in your head wasn't hers anymore. It was Clyde's. You stood up just to see if you could. Your knees cracked like dead wood. Your leg protested, but you ignored it. You took a few steps toward the tree line, slow and careful. It wasn't far, maybe 40 yards, but it felt like another country. Every step made your body feel heavier, like the dirt itself was trying to keep you close. You stopped halfway. The wind shifted. Somewhere behind you, Clyde let out a sigh in his sleep. You looked back, just once, and that was the end of it. You didn't go back to him right away. You sat down in the dirt and watched the trees for a while longer. Imagined what it would be like to disappear, to change your name, bleach your hair, find work in some small town where no one asks questions. But then you thought about the limp, the scars, the way you'd flinch when someone slammed a door too hard, or how you'd never be able to look a police officer in the eye without wondering if they knew. You weren't built for disappearing. You were too damaged to pass for ordinary anymore. You stayed, not because of love, not because of loyalty, but because you didn't know who you were without him. Clyde wasn't just your partner, he was your context, your mirror, the only person who still looked at you like you weren't a ghost. If you left, there'd be no one left who remembered who you used to be. And maybe that version of you didn't exist anymore. But he still talked to her sometimes, even if she was gone. He still called you baby in that tired voice, like it meant something. Maybe that was enough. By the time the sun started bleeding through the trees, you were already back at the car. You slid into the passenger seat and leaned your head against the window. Clyde woke up a few minutes later, blinked at you, and asked if you'd been up long. You told him no. He nodded and lit a cigarette. Neither of you mentioned the dirt on your skirt or the grass stuck to your shoes. He didn't ask, and you didn't explain. That's how it worked now. You think about that night sometimes. Not often. Just when the silence stretches too long, or when you feel a breeze that smells like pine and freedom. You wonder what would have happened if you'd kept walking. Maybe you'd be dead. Maybe you'd be safe. Maybe you'd be staring at a different sky, trying to forget a man with sad eyes and a steady hand. But you'll never know. You chose to stay, not because you had to, because you were too tired to try anything else. You feel it coming. Not in a dramatic way, not some flashing sign or ghostly whisper. It's quieter than that. Like the shift in the air before a summer storm. Like the moment a song ends and the next one doesn't start right away. You've been on the run long enough to recognize the pattern. The chaos always slows down before something breaks. Clyde drives slower now, stops more often, sits behind the wheel with the engine off longer than he used to, says it's to rest the tyres, save the gas, but you know better. He feels it too. The roads feel longer, even when the towns are close together. Time stretches in strange ways. You wake up and don't know what day it is. You go to sleep and dream of nothing, just black. Not even the usual flashes of blood or sirens, just silence. You think that should feel restful, but it doesn't. It feels like absence, like something has already ended, and no one's told you yet. You keep expecting to hear bad news, even though you are the bad news. You're the headline people cross themselves over, the name they use when they want to scare their daughters straight. Clyde doesn't talk much these days. He never was a chatterbox, but now he's practically mute. He keeps both hands on the wheel, even when the road is empty. His eyes flick to the rear-view mirror so often, you think he might forget to look ahead. You asked him once what he thought would happen if they caught you. Really caught you? No running, no shooting, no clever escape. He didn't answer right away. just kept driving, chewing his lip raw. When he finally spoke, he said, "They'll make a show of it." That was all. Then he turned on the radio. "You think of your mama more than you want to admit. Not in the way you used to, full of shame and childish longing, but in a practical way. You wonder if she'll cry when she hears, if she'll sit down at the kitchen table and hold her face in her hands, if she'll curse you or forgive you, or just go quiet and keep cooking. You imagine someone coming to her door with a newspaper folded under their arm. You imagine her reading it in pieces, lips pressed tight, coffee going cold. You wonder if she'll keep the photo or tear it in half. You write less now. The notebook is still there, tucked between the seat cushions with a pencil that's been sharpened down to a nub, but the pages stay blank. You flip through them sometimes, read the old poems, the ones you wrote when the wounds were fresh and the fear was still new. They sound like someone else, someone young and reckless and stupid enough to believe in romance. You try to find that voice again, but all that comes out now are fragments, half-formed lines about silence and rust, nothing worth saving. The stillness is the worst part. The way nothing happens, but everything feels like it's about to. You haven't seen a police car in days. No roadblocks, no tails. The motel clerks don't look at you funny. The gas station attendants barely glance up. It should feel like relief. It doesn't. It feels like a setup. Like the calm they give you before they take everything. You keep waiting for the door to splinter, for the tires to blow, for the woods to come alive with rifles and boots. But they don't. Not yet. So you wait. Clyde polished his gun yesterday. Not because it needed it, but because he needed something to do. He cleaned it slow, careful, like he was saying goodbye. You watched from the bed, too tired to sit up, too restless to lie still. He looked different in the light, older, like the last few months had stretched his face, the way time does to men who know they've lost already. He didn't look scared, just resigned, like someone who spent too long expecting a miracle and finally accepted that it isn't coming. There's a spot on your leg that won't heal. It's small, just a patch of skin where the burn opened again, but it oozes. It smells wrong. You wrap it every morning and try not to think about it. That's the new rhythm. Change the bandage, eat whatever you can stomach, stare out the window, wait. Some nights you sleep through, but most nights you don't. You lie awake, counting your heartbeats, wondering if this is the last safe place you'll ever see, and if it is, whether that would be such a terrible thing. You've stopped making plans. There's no point. No dream of the future can stand up against the shape of what's coming. You can feel it, the inevitability of it, the way it's moving toward you like headlights around a bend. You used to flinch at the thought of dying. Now it just makes you tired, not scared, just done. Like reaching the end of a long walk and realizing you don't want to take another step, no matter what's ahead. You think you'll know when it's time. Not because of anything dramatic, not because of a sign, just a shift, a glance, a silence that's too long. You'll take one last look at the sky, too wide, too blue, too peaceful for what's coming, and you'll know. And when it happens, it'll be quick. You hope so, because all the dying you could handle, you've already done that. The rest is just cleanup. There's no warning, no slow build, no dramatic swell of music or final moment of clarity. It just happens. 1 second, you're wiping sleep from your eyes, the sun slanting through the trees like it always does, painting the dashboard in soft gold. The next, the world explodes. You don't even have time to speak, let alone run. The birds go silent. The rifles don't. They crack like thunder, sharp and final. The first shot punches through the windshield, and the glass blossoms outward like ice. You never even turned your head. There's no last kiss, no goodbye. You and Clyde didn't hold hands. You didn't get a chance to whisper anything meaningful. You'd been arguing softly about whether to stop at the next diner or wait for a safer town. He was focused on the road, squinting into the light. You were still half asleep. Your legs sore, your head full of static, and then the bullets came. Not one or two, all of them, at once, as if someone had been holding their breath for days and finally let it all go in one violent exhale. You don't know how many hit you. It doesn't really matter. One would have been enough. But they kept coming, tearing through the car like it was paper, through you like you weren't even there. You didn't flinch, there wasn't time. Your body jerked, yes, but it was automatic, like a puppet with the strings yanked hard. Pain bloomed, fast and meaningless. Your chest, your shoulder, your face. You think your hand went up. Maybe out of instinct, maybe just a twitch, but that's all. No screams, no fight. Just the sudden, horrifying realization that it was already too late. Clyde didn't cry out either. His body jerked with the first hit, then again, then again. You saw the side of his head snap against the window. His mouth opened, but no sound came. Blood sprayed across the dash, hot and bright and final. You watched it because there was nothing else to look at. Your eyes couldn't move. Your muscles had forgotten how to listen. There was no thought in your head, no memory, no prayer. Just the noise, just the ripping, tearing, shattering sound of a life ending. The car stopped moving on its own. Clyde's foot slipped from the gas, or maybe the engine just gave up. It rolled a little and then jerked to a halt. Nose tilted slightly into a ditch. The gunfire stopped almost as fast as it started. The sudden silence was worse than the noise. It pressed in from all sides, thick and absolute. Dust drifted down from the treetops. You heard nothing but your own blood, thick and slow in your ears, already forgetting what a heartbeat sounds like. You could still see out the window, or what was left of it. The glass was gone, just jagged edges, streaked with red. Through it, the sky looked too blue, too peaceful. It should have been raining, or dark, or anything other than that soft, perfect morning light. But it wasn't. It was a beautiful day in Louisiana, and your body was cooling by the second. They didn't rush in right away. They waited. You can't blame them. They'd seen what you could do, what Clyde could do. They weren't taking chances. You think someone shouted your names, maybe not even to confirm death, just to hear the sound, just to fill the quiet. No one answered. Of course no one answered. They crept closer eventually. Boots on gravel, a click of metal, the rustle of grass under cautious steps. You were already gone, but they checked anyway, poked through the wreckage, looked at what was left of your face. Someone whispered, "Jesus." Someone else lit a cigarette. Maybe the same way Clyde used to, with shaking fingers and a distant look in his eyes. They pulled your body out first, carefully, but not gently, the way someone handles a package that might still be ticking. You were lighter than they expected. You always were. They laid you on the ground, like a question they weren't ready to answer. Clyde followed, limp and slumped, still gripping the steering wheel, in death like he was trying to drive away. You don't get to see what happens next. That part belongs to someone else. The headlines, the photos, the crowd that comes to gawk, the people who touch the bullet holes in the car like relics, the stories that twist themselves into something cleaner, sharper, easier to tell. You don't hear the men pose for photos. You don't hear the laughter. You don't hear the words justice or finally or good riddance. You've already gone quiet. And that's the worst part. Not the blood, not the pain, not the way your body jerked with every round. It's the stillness that follows, the slow drift of dust in the air, the way the birds return, cautious and soft, as if death were just a passing storm. It's the peace that doesn't feel earned, the end that comes without ceremony. No final line, no exit music. Just a body in a ditch and the sound of nothing. They put the car on display for a while. The same Ford you died in, riddled with bullet holes, soaked through with blood that had already gone dark by the time they dragged your body out. People came from towns you'd never heard of to gawk at it. Mothers lifted their children up so they could see the holes in the doorframe. Men tapped the glass with their knuckles and whistled through their teeth. Cameras flashed. Nobody cared that the seat still smelled like copper and gunpowder, that the dashboard was still sticky with what used to be you. They called it a spectacle, a warning, a piece of history. Your body didn't get much better treatment. They laid you out where anyone could see you. Someone even propped your head up for a photo. Clyde too. You both looked half human by then. Too much damage to seem real, too much silence to look like sleep. People lined up to stare. Some cried, some spat. A few tried to steal locks of your hair, scraps of your dress. One woman pressed her fingers to your cheek, like she expected you to wake up and ask for a cigarette. You didn't. They say you became a legend, that your story spread like fire through the newspapers, through pulp novels and radio shows, and half-true confessions. You were famous in death in a way you never managed to be while you were still breathing. That's what they always say about people like you, that dying made you bigger, that the bullets turned you into something eternal. But that's not the truth. The truth is, you were easy to package, easy to turn into something people could understand in one sentence. Lovers on the run, gun-crazy kids, the devil's sweethearts. They made poems out of you, short ones, rhyming ones, the kind you used to write before your hands shook too badly to hold a pencil. Most of them got the details wrong. They put you in red dresses you never owned, gave you diamonds you never wore, made you glamorous, tragic, dangerous. They made you into something neat, but you were never neat. You were messy and bleeding and tired and sore. You were a girl in love with the wrong direction, clinging to the only person who knew what kind of hell you were already carrying. Some people say you deserved it, that you had it coming. They point to the banks, the blood, the bodies. They forget the parts where you starved, where you begged for mercy and didn't get it, where you cried while Clyde pressed bandages to your burns and kissed your forehead like it meant something. They forget the infections, the sleepless nights, the cracked bones, and the prayers that never reached anyone. Because that's not legend material. That's not marketable. The car still bleeds. They try to clean it, but it never really comes out. The seats stay stained, the floorboards warped. Time doesn't fix it. People run their fingers along the bullet holes and say things like, "Can you believe it?" But none of them picture what it sounded like inside, what it smelled like, what it felt like to be inside that moment, to die with your eyes open and your mouth half formed around a thought that never got spoken. Your mother got the news in pieces. First the headline, then the photos, then the calls from reporters asking for quotes. She didn't cry in public, but she stopped hanging laundry outside for a while, stopped sitting on the porch. Some neighbour said she looked thinner, like someone had scooped something out of her that would never grow back. You wonder if she kept any of your poems, or if she burned them one by one, hoping the smoke would carry some part of you home. Clyde's name stayed next to yours, even after death. That's what people remember. Bonnie and Clyde. Never just Bonnie, never just Clyde. You're one long syllable now, like a gunshot. No space between you, no air, just a story told over and over until it stops sounding like it happened to real people. They turned your faces into merchandise, pinned your memory to postcards, framed your deaths in diners. You're still dying in a way, over and over, in grainy footage and painted murals and tourist trap museums filled with replicas. But none of those places remember how hungry you were, how much it hurt to laugh when your ribs were cracked, how the night stretched long and silent while you stared at the ceiling and waited for the sound of boots outside your door. They don't remember the rot in your leg, or the shake in your hands, or the way Clyde looked at you that last morning, like he wanted to say something and never got the chance. You're not haunting anything. You're not watching from the beyond. There's no justice to weigh, no revenge to take. You're gone. What's left is just noise, just stories, just blood in a car that still smells like heat and failure. You didn't become a poem, you became a warning. But even warnings fade eventually. The road keeps going. The sky stays wide. The car keeps bleeding. And that's the end of tonight's slow ride through a life that didn't end in glory. Just gunfire, gasoline, and too many bad nights in borrowed rooms. If you're still awake, thanks for drifting through history with me. If you'd like early access or just want to support the show, the Patreon's in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, and leave a comment about where you think you would have jumped out. The first flat tire or the second bullet wound. Sleep well.